You're live. Hey, Stephanie. I'm not sure why it says tomorrow. It's already tomorrow where I am, but I also can't change the time. Like I've tried to change the time, but I can't seem to do that. So I know you guys on Patreon are going to be saying, been there, done that. We don't really need to see any of this because you've put all the photos on Patreon already. Actually, there are a lot of photos that I haven't put up, and some of them are really the best photos. So there really is a point to being here. And you may think, Team Peachtree, leave all your critical thinking behind. You may also think that it is about, how can I put it? It's all, how can I, it's all sort of happy-go-lucky kind of thing. It is a happier space. It is a more comfortable space. But we are nevertheless going to be thinking, and there's a really interesting mystery dealing with this whole thing. How on earth, if you think about it, how on earth do you make a success of traveling around in a vehicle built before the Second World War? In other words, how do you pull this off? You've got 4 kids, right? This guy's not like a really wealthy person, right? Is not they're not a wealthy family. So how on earth do you think they managed to pull it off to be on the road for 22 years with 4 kids? Think about the van life trip with Gabby and Brian. They couldn't really even survive 2 or 3 months. And Bria and I were talking about, were they actually shoplifting there at the end, right? There is another family that went on the road. How were they able to put it off for 22 years? There's a bit of a mystery there. What do you think the answer is? Okay, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at some pictures, and I'm going to be reading you a little bit of my photojournalism dealing with this. If you don't believe me, if you think, wow, I don't think he actually knows about these people, this is the book that they gave me. It's actually a signed copy. Where is the signature? It's a signed copy. It actually says, Nick, keep chasing dream. And you can see the date at the top there. And I think it says Sandstone States. It should be Sandstone Estates. South Africa, February, is that 2013, right? And yeah, and so this is their book, Spark Your Dream. I'm not necessarily recommending it. I'm just saying this is the book that they wrote. And there's the back of it. And I'm going to take you guys through. The reason I say I'm not necessarily recommending it, it's not that there's anything wrong with the story. It's just that their English isn't so great. So that's a factor, right? That's definitely a factor. I would like to know from you guys. Some of you browsed around the videos that are on this channel. Do you think I should delete them, or do you think I should unlist them? Bearing in mind that if this channel grows, you might get some people who would want to throw stones. I don't know if you found anything that you might feel, well, maybe you should get rid of that video. I haven't really bothered to look I haven't really looked to sort of decide, okay, I'm not going to want to show that. Anyway, so should we go through some of the other images? So this this whole adventure reminds me of this little golden book Walt Disney from Walt Disney, the story of the flying car. Obviously, the car isn't literally flying, but it's this really idiosyncratic scenario where this incredibly old car manages to go around the world. You know, it's almost like a contradiction, right? Stephanie says, I would enlist them. Okay, I'll definitely consider that. Okay, so let me take you through some of these images. So you wouldn't have seen these images on Patreon. That is Candelaria, that's Herman Zapp's wife, with one of their daughters. I think that is Namibia or Botswana, but definitely in Africa. By the way, just over my shoulder, that's what you can see. There's the front of the vehicle. It's got like a flying angel in the front, and then in front of it are wildebeest. I think that might be Kenya. So that is Herman. I'm not quite sure, and he's from Argentina. He is the best English speaker of the whole family. When I met them, his kids could barely speak English. His wife also not that much. He could speak fairly well. I'm not quite sure what that is. I don't know if something broke, or I'm not quite sure what that's all about. So can you see? Let's make myself a little smaller here. Can you see? It says there, a family driving around the world, and that website is sparkyourdream, I think .net. I think it's also on here. Spark Your Dream, sparkyourdream.net. Yeah. So let me ask you guys again, how do you think they managed to travel all around the world for 22 years? And I don't think they really used social media. It wasn't like they didn't have Instagram or something like that. How do you think they made it work? What do you think was their secret? The other thing that's quite amazing, I have actually gotten into this vehicle myself, is it's actually got quite a lot of space. A normal vehicle would basically not go much beyond that. Even an SUV wouldn't go much beyond that. And then it really is quite a large vehicle. You can get quite a lot inside it. The other thing that you might not think is it's actually a 4x4. So all four wheels turn at the same time, which, as you can imagine, is quite helpful. The part that's not helpful is if you get a flat tire with a tire like that, are you going to easily be able to replace it? And you would imagine that comes with all sorts of headaches, right? They are not a wealthy family. They are not a wealthy family. Were they sponsored? No. Okay. That is obviously in Africa. I think that's Botswana. You can see at the back there a family driving around the world. This is a big sort of chest, and I guess all of their possessions for the journey are in there. So that's for 6 people. That's for the father and the mother and 4 kids. All goes into that. And then I guess that's sort of a tent. There's a fuel can. Some of their kids, that's definitely Botswana with a baobab tree. Some of the downsides of traveling through Africa, but certainly in that vehicle, getting stuck. So here you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, around about 10 people trying to get the vehicle out of what looks like a muddy ditch. But I'm going to keep asking you guys the question, what do you think, or how do you think they were able to pull off traveling around the world in a really old car for 22 years? In other words, making a success of a type of van life or road trip scenario. What was their secret that Gabby and Brian didn't have? What would you say? Okay. So these are some of the articles. So let me do this. So these are some of the articles I wrote. The Zen of Travel, Zap Family Roadshow. I'm going to be reading a little bit from this particular one. There's also Zapping Through Namibia, that is in this motoring magazine, Leisure Wheels. So I suppose I should show you the covers. This one, The Zen of Travel, comes from Longevity magazine. This one, Zap Family Roadshow, comes from You magazine, which is part of the biggest, it's the biggest publication in South Africa. It's this publication that I tried to publish the story on Reeva Steenkamp, and they never actually accepted it. Another one in Leisure Wheels, Slow and Steady, right? And then there's this one in About Time, which is an in-flight magazine for South African airline. I'm not quite sure what I called this one. But anyway, there's a photo from it. There we go. Then there's also this one. I'm not sure if you're counting how many articles this is, but this is a magazine called I Magazine and The Incredible Journey, right? And then this one in Your Family. This was published in Your Family, and at this stage it was about halfway through their trip, 6 on the road for 5,000 days and counting. Okay. And then this also included a reference to them. This was in a publication called Travel Ideas, which is associated with a supermarket, and the story is titled Restart in Namibia. You may recognize that image in the middle there. Okay. So I'm going to be reading to you from this one, Zap Family Roadshow, just for a couple of minutes and until you guys get bored. Okay, so those are just some of the articles that I was industriously working on. I thought I found a great story here, and I ended up writing about 6 or 7 articles just on this one family, but obviously in different parts of the country. In Namibia, I think in Botswana, and then various parts of South Africa as well. There's my trusty camera. This is them in Botswana. There you can see again a family driving around the world. Now, think about what it's like traveling with small kids for long periods of time. And bear in mind, they've also got to go to school. Bear in mind, you've got to find a place to sleep. They also need food and accommodation. So how do they pull this off? Let me bring it up a little bit. Okay, so these are some of the images that I stumbled upon at the last moment, and I'm really glad I did, because they are pretty cool images. Let me take myself out the picture there. You can actually just see the earth there in the corner. So they're quite high in the air already. That is above the desert in Namibia from the hot air balloon. So these are some of the experiences these kids and adults have traveling around the world. These are just a snippet of the things that they see through the course of their lives traveling around the world. And it's obviously things that some of us will never see and will never experience. I don't think I've ever been in a hot air balloon. I think I've been near one. I don't think I've gone up in a hot air balloon. Is there anyone here that has? Wolfie says, did they work their way around? They didn't work. They didn't work. Homeschooling. Yeah, well, car schooling. So to give you an idea of what they are up against, that is my car tire. So I went into Namibia myself. and I was coming back along a section of road known as the Caprivi Strip, and it seemed like my car was sort of limping a little bit. There seemed a little bit of a what's the word? There seemed to be a little bit of a repetitive motion, and it actually turned out that um, I'd lost strips of my tire already. Bear in mind, I've been driving over dirt for thousands of kilometers. This is not in a 4x4, it's a normal sedan. So you can imagine if that happened to me in my vehicle, what happens in their vehicle going 350,000 kilometers, right? This actually could have been not life threatening, but I was driving at quite high speed only to stop much later on and realize that's my tire. The tire could really easily have burst. But it's not a very difficult thing for me to replace that tire, because tire sizes are quite standard. I actually remembered they didn't quite have the right tire in Namibia, but they found one that was good enough. You can imagine with a 1928 vehicle how hard it is getting the right tire, right? And the fortuitous thing with that is the right tire for this kind of vehicle. See if I can bring it up. The right tire, that's a photo I took. The right tire for this kind of vehicle is a front tractor tire, the sort of ordinary front tractor tire. Quite interesting, right? So I also took that photo. That's the odometer. I'm not quite sure if it was still working. That is from Namibia. That's just par for the course. That I think was taken in Australia. We'll kind of come back to that. Okay, let's quickly get past this point. So here I'm actually in the vehicle. I also took this photo. Here I'm actually inside the vehicle. It looks like he's got a navigator there or a cell phone or something. So although it's a very old vehicle, they've got some modern technology speeding themselves along. They've also got one of these books right over there. Can you see that? So I think that's part of the answer. One of the answers to how were they able to finance their trip was they wrote a book, and they either gave away the book. I mean, they gave me this copy, or they sold books. So they would say, don't give me a donation, buy our book. And so that's what would happen. Then someone would buy the book, someone else would see the book, and so on and so on and so on, right? I also took this photo, just kind of trying to capture the idea of homeschooling on the road. You can imagine what it must be like to be somebody else meeting these kids and saying, where are you from? What did you, yeah, where are you from? I think it's going to be quite hard to not say lots of different places, right? I kind of wanted to do a sort of famous five version of this particular photo. So I basically told them to all stand by the vehicle and then run towards the camera. So it's not just a repeat photo of everyone just standing around a car. You kind of get the sense of the family on an adventure, right, in this particular image. So that's kind of where the photographer needs to get his shot, but in terms of the people in the shot, right? There's another attempt to get something in addition out of the whole experience. There is that angel that's sort of doing its thing, and there I got him to climb up onto a windmill. So the idea was to find a spot where we could park the vehicle and then get him in the windmill next to it. It didn't quite work out, but I don't think it was. I don't think it ended up being such a bad photo. You know, it wasn't a roaring success, but it wasn't a terrible idea either. And then that ended up being one of the best photos, and that's the photo that appears in this magazine article, um, the Zap Family Roadshow, right? Now, what actually happened there was I said to them, we need to try and find some sunflowers, and then I want to take you a photo of you guys in the sunflowers, because at that time South Africa had lots of fields just full of sunflowers. The thing that was quite weird was trying to get the sun and the sunflowers and the car all to come out. And the weird thing was, in order to get the sunflower facing you, the sun was behind the sunflower. And so that then created a problem for the photography. The photo did come out, but sort of barely. I also asked him to turn his light on. So it ended up being quite a difficult photo to take, because sunflowers, what's the word? Sunflowers face, I guess, the direction where the sun comes up in the morning, and this was quite late in the afternoon. So, you guys want me to read an excerpt from this article? So let me bring it up. You guys want me to read an excerpt? Okay. So let's do it like that. Then you can let's do it like that. Okay, so this is Zap Family Roadshow. Okay, it's from You Magazine, dated 21 March 2013. So this was really about a month and a week after Oscar had killed Reva, right? Okay, so the subtext here is, they started out as a couple and a car. Now, 13 years and 4 kids later, the Zaps are still traveling with no intention of stopping. Okay, so now you've got to think, how do you start this story in a way that's, I mean, it's already an interesting story, but how do you color it in a way that's going to grab the reader's attention? So, what do you think about this start? The Zap family would probably thank you if you urinated against their car's wheels on a hot, dry day. It's what they have to do occasionally to prevent their ancient vehicle's wooden spokes from drying out and snapping. Well, they do it if they have no other water available on one of the long stretches during their seemingly endless trip around the world. How's that for an opening? The Zaps aren't your average suburban family. 13 years ago, Herman and Candy left their home in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and since then they've had 4 kids, each born in a different country. And because they aren't materially wealthy, make do characterizes their lifestyle, even when it comes to maintaining the wheels of their 1928 Graham Page car. The gypsy life is all they've known as a family. They've driven along the roof of the world in the shadow of Mount Everest. They've joined the buzz of traffic beneath New York's skyscrapers and forded the mighty Amazon River. Now they're crisscrossing South Africa. We caught up with them on a perfect day in the Eastern Free State. Herman, 44, is a former network technician with a glint in his eye that hints at a quirky sense of humor. Former Secretary Candy, 42, has the look of someone who has enjoyed a long holiday in the sun. Sitting on top of the car is their eldest child, tussle-haired Pampa, 10 years old, who was born in America. Brother Tehu, 7, wearing a green shirt emblazoned with a red car, was born in Argentina. On the back seat, Sister Paloma, 5, born in Canada, is reading a book. 3-year-old brother Wallaby was born in, yes, you guessed it, Australia. The family is lodging with businessman and locomotive enthusiast Wilfred Mole on his Vicksburg farm. He spotted the antique car and invited the Zapps to be his guests. So that is the first page of the article. What did you think? Think I should have given up my day job and become a YouTuber? So if you like, I'll continue reading from the article, but I first want to go through some additional photos. How can I put this in without damaging it? Let's just do that. So I've really got 3 files that are full of that are about that thick, that are full of these articles that I've collected over my photojournalism career. Anyway, we'll read from this a little bit later on. Yeah, well, for short, yeah, definitely. Okay, so that is from a photo taken from the back of the book, right? And it retraces their first journey. So I think what happened was Herman realized that they had an old vehicle in their family, and he fixed it up. And then he thought, why didn't we use this vehicle and we drive up to the top of South America? And I think they did that journey. And then they said, well, why not stop there? Why don't we drive all the way to the top of America? And then they did that. They went all the way to Alaska and came all the way back. Then they said, why don't we keep doing this? Let's travel around the world, right? True Jedi Forever, good to see you, says, sorry, stuck late at work with busy hands, but I'm enjoying listening intently. So again, I want you guys to think, how do you think they pulled this off? Even selling books isn't going to be able to feed. I can tell you that as an author. Even if you're selling books and you're doing a good job at it, you're not going to be able to feed a family of 4 kids. You're not going to be able to pay for all your fuel. So how do you think they managed to pull off this journey for 22 years? Okay. So that is their trip across the states. You can see they're not trying to take the shortest route possible. They go where the, what do they say? The something leads you. They go where the spirit leads them. So they decided to go through Texas, and I guess, is that South Carolina? Where's Greensboro? And then all the way to basically Washington and I guess New York. And then through parts of Canada, that's where one of their kids were born actually. Then past the Grand Canyon. I don't know if this map is strictly speaking accurate because Denver's down here. And then LA and all the way up to the very top of Alaska. And then I guess they must have come kind of back down a similar way unless they got onto a ship. Okay. No, they didn't do odd jobs. They didn't do odd jobs. So there the family is. I've got no idea where. It might be Australia. But that's their signature photo. Hands in the air. Yay. We're so happy. I took this photo. It's just a bit unfortunate what he was doing with his finger there. This was in Namibia. There you can see Graham Page Auto Sales. That's me. And then there is some, I guess, a picnic by the side of the road. There is another stop somewhere through Africa. You can see over there is a motorbike, which I think belongs to a journalist. I'm not 100% sure. One thing they told me when I met them in Namibia was that they had a, or it could even have been in South Africa. Anyway, they said they had a National Geographic photographer with them, and they didn't really enjoy it very much. They didn't really like having this sort of embedded photographer, so they actually got rid of him. If you think about it, that's quite a milestone to have a National Geographic dude with you. But they actually felt like, wow, this guy's kind of irritating us, and maybe he didn't like the pace at which things were happening, and then they just sent him on his way. That's how I understood the story. It could have been the other way around, that the National Geographic photographer thought something else. I don't know. That's on the edge of the Victoria Falls. So that's another photo you wouldn't have seen on Patreon. Quite a, in a way, risky photo to take, and quite a risky position, right? Wolfie says the kindness of strangers, panhandling, performing in some way. Some interesting ideas. So they are coming into Zambia. Again, you've got to kind of ask yourself, think about Gabby and Brian. They didn't have the most modern vehicle, but you can imagine this vehicle was much more expensive on fuel, right? And also the other expenses would have been much more. Food, accommodation, uh, parts, fixing parts. And they're not really using social media, right? So how on earth are they making money? How on earth is all of this coming together? So yeah, they are in some part of Africa. I think it might be Botswana or Zambia, I guess. It looks like there's a bit of homeschool going on, doesn't it? This is Namibia. There's a bicycle on the roof there. One wonders where that came from and what they would eventually do with that, because would you be able to take it everywhere you're going? This should give you a clue. A family driving around the world. So you're not just seeing this vehicle, you're seeing those words, right? And anyway, so here are some hot air balloons. This is in Namibia. I think it's near Sossusvlei. I love that photo. I wish I could claim that I took it, but I didn't. But I really do like that photo. I think it's a stunning photo that captures the essence of what you're talking about, right? And it's a photo they sent me that made the sort of title image of for this magazine in longevity, right? Okay. Nisi says public engagements of some type. Stephanie says, and then a percentage from advertisements. Run the World says, did extended family members support them? They are living my dream. So here's another pretty cool photo. Quite a nice car. Eh? You can see that it's pre-Second World War. That, I'm not sure where that is, but it could be Kenya. That gives you a sense of what it feels like to be behind the wheel. Pretty cool. That feels a little bit like some scenes from the movie Out of Africa, doesn't it? So I remember when I saw them, they had this sort of cover over the vehicle, and I think it's partly because they open the engine. It's partly for that, and then also I think some people sleep inside the vehicle, so it's a kind of curtain over there so that they can sleep inside the vehicle. Um, don't laugh, but when I met them, I was quite late in terms of the park that we were in. We were actually inside like a game park, and the game park basically had a rule that when the sun goes down, then they close the gates. And if you're inside, you have to sleep inside. If you're outside, you can't come in. And I had what's the word? I had free accommodation thanks to a hotel chain that was sort of sponsoring me just outside the gate. And I was taking photos of Herman at sunsets, basically these photos. The sun was about to set, right? And then I wanted to take those photos and then rush out of the reserve. And they said, no, 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 don't worry, relax. You can stay with us. You can sleep in the tent with us. You can sleep in the car with us. And I was like, no way. There's no way I'm going to do that. There's no way. And because, where I was going promised free free dinner and a nice bed to sleep in. And, although they're wonderful people, I was just like, the choice between sleeping in a car and with these wonderful celebrities and sleeping in a nice hotel room, full board and lodging, dinner paid for, breakfast paid for, nice, relaxing, and a shower and all the rest. No, thank you. And they were quite offended by that. They were like, "Cheapers, you don't really have the spirit of a camper." So I thought that was quite funny. And the answer is yes. If I can camp, but if I have the choice, I think I would prefer not to. And they thought that was quite funny. They were quite surprised at that. They were definitely quite surprised. Okay, so there's another shot of the vehicle. You can see that on the outer edge of that is basically marketing again for their book. So they definitely were marketing their book. You can see it says Spark Your Dream on the front there. So that was certainly one way they were making money, but it definitely wasn't going to cut it, right? Okay. Do I have any more photos? Do I not have, or do I not have any more photos? Was that the last one? Okay. Let's just have a look at my thing here. Yeah, that looks like it's about it. So anyway, those are some photos that you wouldn't have seen otherwise. Okay. Working for a travel agency? No. You must also remember one of their biggest headaches would be going into a new country every time. You've got to get visas and things like that, travel documents for 6 people every single time. That I think was one of the most frustrating aspects of that trip for them. Okay, so let me take you through to the text from the Patreon post. So I took that photo. That was kind of where I would have spent the night if I'd not gotten out of the camp. This was kind of their camp, and I would have spent the night basically in this sort of place, right? This was the location for where they said, "Hey, just hang out with us." Right? Okay. So it is an incredible achievement. 5 continents, a 94-year-old car, and they went around the world for 22 years, and they didn't take the quickest route either. And I think what this shows you, and I hope some of you are not going to abandon me too soon, meaning because I'm going to get to the punchline. of how they did pull this off and what the secret psychology is. This won't be much more than another 20 minutes. But the point is, anything is possible if you persevere. But there's another side to that, right? So if you were Gabby and Brian, you might look at that and say, that will never work. That is never ever going to work. And I think a lot of people would have said that as well. There's no way you're going to get that car even into the next country, never mind around the world, right? But anything is possible. But there's another aspect to what you're talking about here. That's the secret psychology. Okay. So this is another photo. I think I took this photo. There you can see how close to sunset this was, and how fast I had to hightail it out of there to get to the gate before the sun went down, right? So let me read this. You may not think that a car that was built a decade prior to the Second World War might get you far, but that's the sort of thinking that's just not peachy, because the Zab family drove a total of 362,000 kilometers. That's about 9 circuits of the Earth in that, right? In other words, like most circumnavigators, they weren't in a hurry to get it over. Sorry, unlike most circumnavigators, they weren't in a hurry to get it over and done with. So they could say, hey, we went around the world. Now, that's part of the secret that they were actually able to do this, was that they weren't in a rush. If they were rushing around, probably the vehicle would have broken down. If they were rushing around, they probably would have been running out of parts pretty quickly. But they basically took the reality that they were in, that we're in a very old vehicle, and instead of trying to go around the world in 80 days, they took their time. It was almost like they got a message from the vehicle itself. They got a message from the spirit of the vehicle, which is, well, it's literally what I wrote here: slow and steady, right? Slow and steady. Let me bring that up. Right? Slow and steady. And it was actually very slow, and it probably would irritate some people. 22 years in a car, um, taking a long time to get somewhere instead of trying to get somewhere sooner rather than later, right? Okay. Bear in mind, they've also got 4 kids on board that went on to become 4 adolescents. At one point during the Zaps journey, 2013 and 2014, our paths crossed. That was actually a very important part of my life. It was the moment I was about to transition to writing true crime books and getting into true crime. So at the time that I met them, they were at the beginning, well, of their journey through Africa, although they'd been in their journey already over a decade. It was about following your dream. That's what they wrote in the book, their message to me. And shortly after that, I kind of changed direction quite fundamentally. And I stopped writing so many magazine articles and I started writing books, and I started going into especially American true crime. I think this is not a bad photo. I don't quite know. I don't quite know why or how such a terrible photo was used here. So this is the sort of thing that irritates me as a photographer and a journalist. Let me bring this photo up full size. Can you see it's quite a well executed photo, right? Can you see the sun is nicely formed and it's fairly clear, right? So then you've got to ask, why on earth did someone end up putting such a poor quality photo together? I don't know if you can see that. This is a much more inferior quality photo. than the one that you see there. You can kind of, it's not going to come up on, you won't be able to see it here very clearly. I think if I give you the web link, you might know what I'm talking about. Let's see if I can find it. Leisure Wheels Zaps van der Leer. So I think if you look at this, the images here, you'll get a sense of just how poor this photo is. Look at that photo, and then look at this photo. Look at the sun especially. That photo, and then look at the poor quality photo that they ended up using. Where is it now? Did I lose it? There. So if you can't make that out, let me put it in chat. Go and have a look at the photo in chat and then compare it to the quality of this photo. And that's really irritating when you've taken a good photo and somehow they put a crap version of that photo in their magazine. I'm not sure what they did. I'm really not sure what they did. But, I wouldn't be surprised if they would want to use that as a book cover. A sort of in a subsequent book. Okay. This photo I took in South Africa. It's just where they were somewhere on the road. That's the sort of thing you would see if you were driving your car and you saw this vehicle. You can actually see two bicycles on the top of the vehicle there. And then this is where they gave me their vehicle. They gave me their the book, Sandstone Estates. What's actually happening is they're towing their vehicle. I'm not sure if they had a flat battery or what the situation was. I also took that photo next to a train, and also took this photo. I don't really know what's going on with that dog. That's not Timmy. I think it's a dog called Cheeky, which is a dog that also a Schnauzer. Not my dog, but I think a dog that I took along for the ride. This dog led, I think, I'm not 100% sure what's going on in this photo. It's like not my dog, so why on earth is the dog there? I may have actually thought having the dog in the picture maybe and make it a nicer picture or something like that. But anyway, this dog, if it's the same dog, led me to getting Timmy because it was such a nice dog. It was a dog called Cheeky. But it's quite weird looking at that picture and going, that is not Timmy. What is going on there? And I can barely remember. So I also took this photo, and I think it appears in the magazine article. You guys have seen this one. So all of this was 2013. When was it? March 2013. Almost a year later, I bumped into them again, this time in an area that I wasn't even sure my vehicle could survive, a 20-year-old vehicle. But it led to this article published in Leisure Wheels, a motoring magazine. That's the article I've just provided the link for. And then yet another article in a magazine called Travel Ideas. Can you see how I was hitting three birds with one stone? Writing a story about the Zaps for one magazine, then writing a story about Namibia for another, while including the Zaps, and then conjuring yet another story for another publication from a different perspective. So this is kind of from another publication, and this is another page from that article. interestingly, the piece that I thought would sell, 8,000 kilometers in a 4x2, I was told it was too long. I was told that it lacked spark and that it was too one-dimensional. And this is the route that I actually took when I wrote this story. So I don't know if you guys can make out from this map. This is incredibly long distance. It's incredibly long distance, right through Namibia, all the way there, all the way back. It was somewhere around here that the tire was almost destroyed over here. But this is about 8,000 kilometers. I guess it's about 5,000 miles, something like that. And I actually struggled to sell stories based on the trip and spent a huge amount of money. So in terms of the Gabby Petito thing, I even struggled to make money out of this particular venture. Again, you've got to ask, how on earth are these people managing to do their thing, right? How are they succeeding? So far, I haven't seen that sort of answer that would answer that question from you guys. Okay, so as I said, I spent a fortune on fuel alone, researching, photographing, and traveling through Namibia to write the story, and I wrecked my vehicle and its tires in the process. The gearbox, although it survived, it didn't last for much longer. By the way, I'm a Capricorn, so I thought that's quite a cool Tropic of Capricorn photo. I think shortly after I took this photo, I passed by a Himba tribe, and that tribe, they color their skin like a clay color, and the women are often bare-breasted. And there's quite a funny photo where they're like, I think 2 or 3 bare-breasted women on either side of me, and it's kind of like, yeah, so here I am, and so I'm kind of smiling like, isn't this quite strange? And anyway, it's quite a nice photo. But I think this particular sortie that I went on was, in a way, the end of my photojournalism career. It didn't end immediately, but it basically showed me that I mean, I'd been making money, but it just showed me how cruel the world is for a freelance writer and photographer. I'd really worked hard. I'd gone very far across another country. I'd you know, invested my own vehicle, and I don't think I think I lost money on this, and it made me think, should you continue in this direction at this point in your career? And it was important that I did think that. It was important to take stock and to start the process of adaptation. And I think, in a way, you could say I'm at a similar point now as a YouTuber. Do I want to continue what I've been doing, or do I want to kind of go in a different direction? So, as I say, this was my tire during the half of that trip. But this was some correspondence that I found that I think is quite interesting. Let me bring that up. So this was a editor basically saying, I'm going to pass on your story. Hi, editor, I've got this incredible story for you. You know what? I think I'm going to pass. I'm not really feeling it. And maybe you should pitch it to someone else, blah, blah, blah. And then I think much later on, when I said I'm about done with SA Travel Mags, I think what I meant was, I've gone through all of them and I can't actually find someone who wants them. And then I think I asked him, what am I doing wrong? I said, any reason why you think it doesn't work? And then he said, it's quite long. He said, I like spark and humor. And so, in other words, there's no spark in your writing, whatever, whatever. The photography needs to be more multidimensional. And I think that's a good time to show you some photography. And I don't think he's wrong. I think there's some photographers out there that are totally excellent. And I'm going to put a link to one of them in chat in a second. Let's just go Instagram, Hougaard Malan. If you want to see a fantastic photographer of Namibia, it's this guy. Really good work. Okay, let me bring it up. So these are portraits of Namibia. Just have a look at that. Okay, it's not allowing me to. I'll put a link to that in chat, but this guy is a fantastic photographer. Look at that inside kind of a deserted place. This is really fantastic photography. This is the same area that Keith Alexander would sort of paint. Gives you a bit of an idea. Look at that. Look how evocative that is. So, you know, if you're complaining and you're saying, hey, my photography is not that bad, well, is it as good as this, right? So there are obviously a lot more photos from him to look at. Follow him on Instagram. His photos to me are so good, I would buy them, right? So now I'm going to take you through some of the photos I did take, and let's just have a look at them. What we're going to do here. I think before we do that, let me show you more of the Zap adventure from the beginning. So this is one of the first photos from their adventure. And what I want you to think about is also the quality of photos here. Is this magazine quality, or is the photo about the story, about where they're going? Is the actual value in the enormity of what's actually going on? Or do you say, well, I don't see some really great style in the photography, right? Do you get what I'm trying to say? In other words, is the documentary aspect the story, or is it like, well, I don't get any multifaceted aspect going on here, so we don't really want to know about the story, right? So let me show you another photo. That's going into Mexico. This is the Amazon. Now, again, you might say, can you guys see that? You might say, sorry, that's just not a really great photo. We want photos like that. Otherwise, we're not really interested. But you kind of want to say, do you realize what's going on here? They are actually taking this really old car through the Amazon. You know, isn't that quite amazing? Yeah, but the photography is not really that great. It's very one-dimensional. It really lacks a spark. Okay. This was in Australia. And again, you might say, I'm not really interested in that photo. It's just some people standing in front of an old car. Well, what's the deal? We want some really nice, sparky photography. You know, otherwise you don't really have a good story here. Yes, but they went to Australia and they were like alongside camels, and it really is quite amazing, right? Um, they were in New York. Yeah, but it's just a car in New York. It's not really such a big deal. Yeah, but they were in New York and they went to the Himalayas. They were in front of Lhasa in Tibet. Yeah, but all I see is a car in front of a building. They went close to Everest Base Camp. Look, by the way, I've got a photo of a snowman and some yaks. And this is them digging their car out of a kind of a sandy area, right? And you can kind of imagine that what I'm trying to say is, isn't it a, because this I think was for Top Gear magazine, isn't this the sort of thing that you see when you watch Top Gear? Someone who is eccentrically traveling the world and doing something unusual. And it's like, no, 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 your photos lack spark. And that's like, yeah, but this whole adventure is really quite amazing. In a way, I'm misrepresenting what I'm talking about a little bit, because the story I wanted to sell them was me traveling 8,000 kilometers and encountering them on the way. It wasn't just about them, right? Um, so anyway, you can see how hard it must have been for them again to try and get around, especially Africa, with an old vehicle like this. You can imagine the strain on such an old vehicle, but they weren't really built rickety in the old days. They were actually built quite strong. And all that it is a matter of replacing parts. And I think Herman eventually got quite good at that. He became an expert mechanic in a sense. Here's another picture from somewhere in Africa with a buffalo in front of it. This gives you another sense of what it was like at night. Look at that. And how often he must have gotten under the vehicle to try and, that looks like a flat tire, doesn't it? There's the family. There's another view from inside the vehicle. There is probably something he did so often. Does that look like fun? And I think that is giving you a really good idea of what the true story is of how they um, got around the world and how this journey was possible over 22 years. Are there some of you who want to go to bed? Because then I can maybe answer that question now. We're at about the hour mark. Is there someone who wants me to reveal the mystery? Is there someone who kind of needs to go, or do you can you hold out for a little while longer? Thanks, Angela. Yeah, you might notice you can't give super chats here because the channel is still too small to be monetized. Okay. These still aren't all the photos, but I think you'll agree that they're not bad. But I think let's go back to, is it that photo? No, it's that photo. That photo, okay. Stephanie says I can hold out for a little while longer. I'm really enjoying this. Okay, so I'm gonna read from this a moment from now. So this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna start off by telling you, explaining how this journey was possible. Then I'm going to take you through some of my photography, my one-dimensional photography, and some of it you're going to say is so-so, and some of it you're going to say is, well, that's not bad. And then we'll wrap up. Should be another half an hour or so. Okay, so this is the secret to their success, right? The weakest aspect of this adventure was also by far their strongest weapon. Does that tell you what do you draw something from me saying that? Let me say that again, especially looking at that image. The weakest aspect of this entire enterprise was also by far their strongest asset. You get what I'm getting at? So if I talk about the weakest asset or the weakest aspect, what do you think that is? The vehicle, the car, the car, the car. That is absolutely it. The vehicle. The vehicle is what everybody sees. The vehicle is what everybody notices. The vehicle is what gives you that sense of, but it's impossible. The vehicle is the thing that makes the whole thing amazing and astonishing, right? And I think what they realized when they went on their first trip was that the vehicle was the star of the show. And the vehicle got so much attention and so much interest that it was kind of like a winning card, like an ace card, right? And so that's the first part of the thing. The other part of the thing is if you say they got money from, I don't know, millionaires, or they got sponsorships or something. They got money from selling their books, which is a little bit like an allowance. But at the end of the day, what they lived on was charity. Charity. They were invited to stay for free in people's homes. They were given free, sometimes free board and accommodation, and they were happy with that. In other words, they didn't expect to stay in hotels, although sometimes people put them in hotels. They didn't expect to live like royalty or to have a high standard of living. They were happy to take it slow. They were humble enough when the vehicle broke down to fix it, and so they had this can-do attitude. And with that simple humility, they were able to do something really incredible. So in other words, if you thought, let's try and go around the world in 1 year, and we need all these sponsorships, and we need this and we need that, you can kind of imagine it being quite stressful, and the vehicle itself maybe not even being able to handle it, right? And also the family being not that cohesive, because let's take a photo for social media and we've got to do this for that sponsor. But the way they did it worked, and it was quite a humble approach. If you imagine Gabby and Brian doing something similar, not trying to be the masters of the universe, but actually being a lot more humble in their approach, not going to Whole Foods for meals, but actually eating with locals somewhere, or buying off a food stall at the side of the road, things like that. That can really make the difference. The big secret that the Zaps had was they had the ace card in the most difficult thing, that was the vehicle, a vehicle that would drive slowly, that could overheat, that had all sorts of issues. But at the end of the day, the vehicle that was their burden, that was their curse, the weakest thing about their adventure was also the strongest thing. And so if they accepted the reality of that, then that reality would also carry them forward, right? And I kind of see the same thing in a way, in a weird way, about the most authentic voice in true crime. It feels like it's this burden. It feels like it's a weak aspect in the true crime space. But I also think authenticity can actually be an incredible gift, an incredible, what's the word, experience to share with other people. And that's in a way what I'm trying to do here, is share authentic experiences with you guys, and show you that out of adversity and out of something that doesn't really make any sense, like, why on earth would you saddle yourself up with something that's so hard? Well, as long as you're humble, it could take you really, really, really far if you're prepared to make do with less, right? Isn't that a amazing insight? Just in the basic sense that the reason why the Zaps journey was so successful was they turned the weakest part into their strongest part. And I think they more than anyone else recognized that. It is wonderful, isn't it? I mean, that is the essence of Team Peach Streets, growing towards the light, not knowing it's there, but anticipating that it will be. And with the zaps, it was, right? The not growing in the light is the adversity, the breakdowns, the going slow, the all the difficulties. But then at the end of that, people will embrace you. People will see you on the road and be like, and be so charmed by that and say, wow, this is really incredible. Wow, what you are doing is so incredible. Come and stay with us. Talk to us about what you've done. Oh, yes, we will buy a book. Thank you very much. The other part is that it tells an incredible story, and that is why I wrote one magazine article after another. Is they are living an authentic story that people want to talk about and people want to write about, and that helps them on their way. You know, people writing about them while they are going through a country, and so while they're in a country, they get interviewed, and then the next thing, oh, there they are. Remember, we saw them on television, or there they are. We saw them in the newspaper, or there they are. We read about them in a magazine. Wow, do you guys want to come and stay with us? Right? That's the family that are traveling around the world. Hey, 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 that's really incredible what you're doing. Can I buy your book? Or do you want to come and we've got a farm around there. Do you want to come and stay with us? That's how the whole thing works, right? And it's not about making money, it's just about continuing the journey, right? Continuing to have this really precious experience. That's the thing, that was the prize for them. And if you think about it, it's an incredible prize to travel around the world for 22 years with your whole family with you. And all you need is all you have with you. What more do you need? At the end of all that, you've got this incredible story. I mean, how many books can they write now? So out of that humility comes something truly special and truly magical, right? Yeah. But you can only have that if you kind of step back and you say, I'm prepared to struggle and I'm prepared to make do with less, a lot less, not staying in hotels, not going to Whole Foods, and not wanting to be the talk of the town on social media, not being the envy of everyone. I mean, the reality was a lot of struggle, and they're not trying to pretend that that's not what's going on. They're not trying to pretend it's a fairy tale. I mean, otherwise you would not see this photo. If they're trying to pretend it's wow, it's also wonderful, you would not see this photo. This is part of the of the experience, right? Yeah. So okay, so that's pretty incredible, hey? It's a life lesson that you can actually take with you in your own life. So I'm going to take you guys through some of my photos that this guy passed over. So you might look at that photo and say, it's too one-dimensional for me. You know, it lacks something. What I love about that photo is it's a railway line disappearing into the mist, disappearing into like forever, right? So what I see when I take that photo is a kind of a mysterious element, a kind of a magical element. Often you see a railway line going off into the distance, but how often do you see it disappearing into nothing, right? And so what I'm seeing when I see that picture is something artistic. What he's seeing when he sees that picture is it's really one dimensional. It's nothing's happening there, right? You see what I'm saying? Let's have a look at this picture. This is the second oldest canyon in the world, right? It's the Fish River Canyon. I actually hiked this canyon, and then the next year I think they closed it because it was too dry. Nothing really to say about this image except, yeah, not much to say about it. Um, it's not a fantastic photo. It's the scene itself that's, I think, quite impressive. No, 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 no. It lacks spark. It lacks kind of a dimension. Okay. I think this is near a place called Cape Cross. Now, this is one of the things that's hard as a journalist, and I think this did come up. That picture was actually published, I think, in. It's got to be the one that's right at the bottom. Um, that's actually quite a low resolution picture. I don't know if you guys can see that. That's a much better quality picture than that one, funnily enough. But so that picture was published. But what I'm trying to kind of get at is sometimes you experience something that's very hard to convey in a photo. Or you can't convey the scale of it in a photo. And in a way, this photo is that. Now, you might look at that photo and say, wow, I see lots of, I think they sea lions. I'm not sure if they're seals or sea lions, but I think they're sea lions. And then there's a big wave breaking behind them. And then there's lots of birds flying in the background, right? That's kind of, in a very simple way, what you're seeing. Actually, what was going on was it was at the end of the day, so it was sort of the sort of golden light of the last light of day, and this was rush hour for, I think those are cormorants in the background, and so probably for 5 or 10 or 20 full minutes, you just saw thousands upon thousands upon thousands of cormorants just continuously flying in one direction past the coast, right? And all you're seeing here is one moment where there are maybe 1 or 200 in that frame. But if you could press play, you would have seen them flying and flying and flying, hundreds of them becoming thousands of them, just flying like a rush hour to get wherever they needed to go before the sun went down. And it's not only that they're flying over an endless colony of these sea lions that also went on and on and on, and they make like a noise, like right? You hear this noise, and a noise that maybe you've not heard before in your life. That kind of sort of murmuring, roaring noise, and then there's the sea, quite a wild sea, not a gentle sea, that the waves behind there, you can't really appreciate the scale. There's a really big waves breaking over there. And then you actually see the birds flying sort of, if whenever a wave comes, they'll sort of fly and lift over where the waves are. And this whole scene together, the birds, the big surf pounding, and then also this colony of sea lions, all of it contrives to give you the sense of Earth, the original Earth, the sense of what's the word? Wildlife, wild places, right? That don't belong to human beings, that human beings haven't subdued, wild places that are out there that remain wild. And you are arriving as a spectator into that world, not them into your world. And that is what made this quite epic. That is what made this quite an epic experience. So the other thing that made this quite interesting was um, I wasn't supposed to be there. So when I arrived at the hotel, Cape Cross, I said, I want to go and see the sea lions or something. And they said, sorry, it's closed. And I didn't take no for an answer. And I raced out of there. and I went through the gate, and I think the gate said no entry after this time, and I went through there, and I came to this point, and I took some photos, and I absorbed the experience for a while, and then I left. And when I left, I think I can't remember if they were trying to close the gate or what, but I was sort of not trespassing, but I wasn't really supposed to be there, but I insisted, and I won this. I got this photo, which ended up being in this magazine. If I didn't make the effort, I would have not. I would have just not had that experience. So that's the other part, is you've got to try and take a risk sometimes, not because it makes sense, but because you want to, because you should, because you've gone to all the trouble to go there. Don't be denied, right? The other thing that was so amazing about Namibia is a desert country, and there was so much life in Namibia. This is a monitor lizard, or a leguan. We also get them on our farm over here, but I think that's pretty much the biggest one I've ever seen. Looks like a Komodo dragon. This is marabou storks, also in Namibia. Let me take myself out the picture. Pretty ugly birds, aren't they? This is grass in front of rock, kind of growing out the sand. But I personally love that photo. I personally really like that photo. And of course, the editor says it's not very multidimensional. It's bleh. That to me is quite artistic. But I can understand, what am I looking at here? I can understand that. What am I looking at there? I just see, what is that? Like, what's going on there? It's very one-dimensional. I just, what are you taking a photo of? Well, what I'm taking a photo of is flamingos in the sunshine in the foreground, even though the foreground in front of that is in the shade. So in other words, there's shade in the foreground, but the birds are in the sun. And then there's a body of water, and behind the body of water is desert. How often have you seen something on land, water, and then desert behind like that? And I've actually got this picture in my lounge, blown up in my lounge. Desert and water. And as I say, but an editor will look at that and say, I don't know, I find it it lacks spark. I think we're going to pass on that. It lacks spark, yeah. This is a photo I took in the Caprivi. So this is also Namibia, which is a very desert country. And what I'm trying to communicate through this is the contradiction of water and reflections in water in a country that is just sand, that is 95% sand. This is what you see in that country as well, right? Symmetry in water. This is more from the desert perspective. But I don't know if you can see what I'm trying to convey is the country in an artistic sense, not in a necessarily a documentary sense, and not in a, wow, that photography deserves a prize for photography. Again, I'm trying to show the contradiction of a desert country. Look how moist it is. Look how wet it is. Look at something that you wouldn't expect in that country. There's a crocodile, also in a desert country. there is a picture I personally really like, but what are you trying to convey here? It's very one-dimensional. But I love that contrast. How often do you see sand like that juxtaposed, and it's kind of a light sand with these soft contours, and then the hard rock right behind it, like immediately behind it? How often do you see that? And also in a desert country, you see so much green and so much color. I mean, you can see that, or you can focus on this. That's pretty much most of the country. Looks like that. And if you want to stick to those colors, you want to stick to the palette, well then, there you go. Still want to stick to those colors? Well, there you go. Still want to stick to those colors? There you go. I still today think that it's not that photo, but it's one where the springbok is looking directly at you. I think it's the best photo I've ever taken, because you see the delicate strength of this beautiful animal, the delicate lines, brown lines on its limbs. You can even see the tuft of grass that it's been eating, and all silhouetted against just the background. Just the way that this one antelope, and you often see them in a herd of hundreds, this one antelope simply standing out of the landscape. Sorry, but your photography is really one-dimensional. It sort of lacks a spark. Okay, I think I'm going to give up my job as a photographer and become a true crime writer. This one didn't really come off that well, but the idea is, again, it's almost like peak hour traffic. These oryxes moving in actually two different directions. Some of them are going that way, and some of them are going the other way. That one's certainly going the other way. There's a water hole, I think, on this side. These are zebra. I just like this because it reminded me of Dumbo, holding the tail of the elephant in front. But again, the thing that to me is incredible is that in this desert country, so much life. Have you noticed what I've taken photos of? A fox, a monitor lizard, a very colorful bird, a hippo, elephants, oryx, antelope, zebra, then also vultures, and not just one. Look how many are there. So much life, even in a sort of desert wilderness like this. And then this particular image here I actually have in my lounge as well. I have that picture in my lounge as well. It's not a very good, it's a bit of a low quality version of the picture, but I have that in my lounge as well. I like it because it's almost like an optical illusion. It almost looks like someone has painted these shapes onto a canvas, and they're not actually where they're standing. Someone has put them there. Anyway, unfortunately, that's not the high resolution of that. But anyway, that is what I wanted to share with you guys. And that came from a trip to Namibia where I met the Zaps again. And ultimately, it ended up, my experience with them, it was amazing to see that their adventure was working out for them, but mine wasn't working out for me. I was like, I I can't keep doing this. I'm going to have to not travel around so much. I need to um, make a living in a different way. And I didn't really realize it, but at the time, my photography career was sort of coming to an end, and my writing career was about to sort of take off. And I was about to stay in one place for around about 10 years. And what I next want to do is kind of go back to Namibia. Um, so that's my story. So I hope you found that interesting. We're at 90 minutes. I don't want to go on for too much longer, but I do want to read you one more page from this magazine article. And um, tell me what you think of the prose. Like, is it well written? Is it a bit amateurish? What do you think? So this is from March 2013. When they got to the farm, they couldn't help laughing. Wilfred owns an old black car that looks just like the Graham Page. They're about the same age too, Wilfred says with a chuckle. That's the owner of the farm, Sandstone Estates. He also owns 18 old locomotives, that's train locomotives, and vast sheds filled with vintage tractors. And for once, the Zap's old Jalopy looks quite at home among all these museum pieces. One of the first things we want to know from these veterans of the open road is what they think of South African drivers. Coming from India, the Philippines, and Indonesia, they're so good, Herman says loudly in a strong Spanish accent. Over a simple lunch of pasta and Coke, we learn that fuel is the family's biggest expense. Petrol is very expensive here, Candy says. They fund themselves because our dream is free, and once we agree to do one thing, we start to lose our freedom to be explorers. So in other words, what she's saying is, if we agree to be part of some enterprise, then they actually lose their freedom. So they don't actually want to do that. They'd only be part of someone else's scheme, right? When they run short of cash, they sell copies of their book, Spark Your Dream, the story of the first year of their travels, which has been reprinted 4 times in English and 8 times in Spanish. It's soon clear they don't respond to questions about which countries they've enjoyed most. So that is obviously what I asked them. I said, which country have you enjoyed the most? They don't really want to answer that question. Or about the dangers or the highs and lows they've experienced. It goes against their philosophy on life and travel, which is to be open-minded and receptive to everything and everybody wherever they go. And anyway, they're rather bored with these same old questions. Our home is wherever we are, Herman says. Our home is this car. He smiles and taps the bodywork. He points to a sticker depicting a car riding around the world. It says, driving around our home. The family have few possessions, not even souvenirs. It's essential for them to travel light, but the absence of material goods makes them less of a target for criminals. Yet they have been robbed once by baboons in the Drakensberg. An indication of their philosophical approach is the fact that the car's fuel gauge wasn't working when they left Buenos Aires 13 years ago, and it's never been fixed. Now imagine that. Imagine traveling around the world in a car and the fuel gauge doesn't actually work, and you began your journey with the fuel gauge not working. Now, if you think about that, think about, on the one hand, you'd say, that is insane. On the other hand, you'd say, I'm not going to let fuel stand in the way of getting where I'm trying to go, right? And so I think I asked him, I said, so how do you check how much fuel you've got? And I think he said, well, you pluck a blade of grass and you push it into the tank, and if it reaches a certain point, you know there's fuel, and if it doesn't, then you know the situation. But can you see how there's a sort of eccentric can-do thing that's going on, that some people would say, absolutely not, there's no way I could do this. And someone else would say, yeah, you don't need, if you're driving around the world, you don't need your fuel gauge to work. Just, you know, put the fuel in and go by feel. Yeah, so Stephanie, that pretty much sums that up. That is what I thought as well. Then he says, people think I'm a mechanic, but I don't know much about cars, Herman confesses. We pick up a stick on the side of the road, stick it in the tank, and look. Candy laughs. Or they calculate distance on a map according to fuel consumption of 5.6 kilometers per liter. Not quite sure what that is in miles per gallon. It's not a lot. They set out with trepidation that day in January 2000. So think about the first day that they went on this journey. But they'd been dreaming of the journey since they'd met as children. The car broke down after the first 55 kilometers. That's maybe 40 miles. That's the first time their vehicle broke down. But every setback just made them more determined to press on. They cover about 20,000 kilometers a year. I guess that's about 13,000 miles a year. Around 260,000 kilometers so far. So that they would end up going about another 100,000 kilometers after this point, and have stayed with about 2,000 families. That gives you an idea how they are taken care of. They have family, and other families take care of them. Skype from Herman's laptop helps him stay in touch with their family and friends. Herman takes loads of pictures. They have cell phones and keep up to date with the news via the internet. You have a beautiful country, Herman says repeatedly. He likes green places and forests, Candy explains. She, on the other hand, likes emptiness. She likes quiet places, Herman says. In South Africa, they love the Kruger National Park. Herman can't believe he finally got there after hearing so much about it. While they were spotting the big five, they had 6 flat tires in the park, but they sold more books than anywhere else. Each time someone stopped to help, they felt bad that they couldn't fix our wooden spoke wheel, so they bought a book instead. The Drakensberg and St. Lucia on the KwaZulu-Natal coast are also special to them. They'd wanted to be further north in Africa by now, but altered their plans when people insisted they visit Cape Town. It's obvious Candy and Herman are still loving their adventure, but what is it like traveling so far with 4 children? Children are a blessing, Candy says. Fortunately, they've had few medical problems. Paloma suffered convulsions in Australia, so they took her to hospital in Sydney. Wallaby was born 40 kilometers from the hospital. Pampa broke a leg while using a zip line in South Africa. There's one rule for the kids. They may not watch DVDs or play with their digital toys during the day in the car. What about education? They're learning everything firsthand, Candy says. The world is their classroom. We homeschool them using an online syllabus. Will their journey ever end, we ask. We thought this journey around the world might take us 2 years, Herman says. It's now 13 years, and it ended up being 22 years. So they would continue this journey 9 years after I wrote this article. It's now 13 years, and we think we'll still be on the road for at least 2 more. We haven't seen Africa yet, or the Middle East. What we've learned on this journey is that the more I learn, the more I realize how little I know. Imagine that. You've been traveling around the world for 22 years, or at this point, 13 years. And you're not there to lecture people and say, I know this about these places. You're there to say, there's so much we don't know about this world. There's so much we don't know about this world. We have to give ourselves the chance to live on earth. That's what we're doing. And what better way than to experience it with your family? They're saving Europe for last. But as always, this free and unfettered family won't allow timetables, money, or even destinations to dictate where the road will take them. So they don't even have this thing of, we are going there. They kind of go where they're going. And if someone says, you should go there or you should come with us, then they do that. They are moving in a general direction, but they're not, well, tomorrow we must be there. They are wherever they are. They don't let destinations dictate where the road will take them. People have trouble putting us in a box, Candy observes, but we like that. We don't belong to any organization or sponsor or institution. We're just following our dream, and our dream is to explore. It's as simple as that. Amazing, isn't it? What do you think about this article? Do you think it was written okay? Do you think it's giving credit, giving a voice to their story in a way that it needed to be told in that way? Deborah says, Herman says he loves the people and seeing how they live. So that is it from me. I hope you found this a worthwhile live. I see some of the TCRS paraphernalias here. I still need to change it. I'm not used to being on a different channel. But I want to thank a lot of you for coming over here. Wolfie says, I love the show. Great photos, great story, great article, great break from true crime. So what I'm probably going to follow this up with is two stories that I've thought about. The one is I think I'll title it meeting the voice of cycling. It's a guy called Phil Liggett, right? A British man. So it's the story about meeting someone I really admired, also a journalist, where I met him, and then also meeting someone else that was sort of a hero, someone who was a journalist as well, and just a sense of when you meet some of your heroes, where that takes you, and maybe where it shouldn't take you. So I'm going to be talking about the books they've written, also the legacy that they've had. But that story will mostly be about cycling, about my experience as a writer, as a journalist, as a sports journalist, writing about cycling. It'll probably be in a week or so from now, a week to 10 days. And then after that, I want to deal with the documentary and the Netflix film, No Limit. So if you haven't watched that, make sure you watch it on Netflix. It's a movie called No Limit, and I'm going to be talking about my my journey in that area as a swimmer, as a youngster who was in love with the Big Blue and the soundtrack, but then also the reality of that story. It'll feel a little true crime like because it's kind of a mysterious story. But that's going to be the third episode on this channel. So the next one, meeting the voice of cycling, in about a week to 10 days from now, and then the one after that, dealing with the No Limit story. Quite a intense story. Cool. So that's it from me. Thanks a lot for you guys being here. Stephanie says, thank you so much for sharing. Good to have all of you here. I hope you guys are going to feel when you come here refreshed, rejuvenated, inspired, feeling positive about the world, positive about life, positive about yourselves, positive about what's possible. I hope that's going to be the thing you take away, right? We want to try and balance the analysis and the negativity of true crime with the affirmative aspect of Team Peachtree, growing upward, producing fruit, feeling the light, feeling the sunshine, finding our way, right? Cool. Zirkan says, see you next time. Deborah says, great, I'll try and be there. When is the book club? To be honest, I'm waiting for the book that I ordered to arrive. So it might be another few days. It might be maybe next week. But that is going to be quite regular. Thanks everyone for making it. Terry says it's such a treasure hearing about your passions and accomplishments. Thanks guys. Thank you. Cool. So can you see how sometimes it's good to make a change? You guys might say, no, don't. You must stay with true crime. Sometimes you must allow the buffeting to buffet you somewhere that is a better place for you to be, in the same way that the zaps, sometimes you must deal with your flat tires and deal with your adversities, but sometimes you must also listen to the messages that you're getting and move differently, right? Terry says, I just want to be prepared. I'm listening on Audible. Cool. I really want to try and get Despicable up and running. I put it up as the first thing every day, and so much high profile true crime stuff seems to take over every day. I don't know if you guys know the Caitlin Armstrong case is sort of happening today, but there's stuff happening all the time. I mean, who expected the Gabby Petito footage to come out, right? Anyway, I don't want to talk about true crime here. This is a space for living and breathing and refreshing ourselves away from all of that. Zircon says, I enjoy nature and your deep thoughts. Okay. Okay, guys, all the best. Remember our mantra at this channel: keep weaving, keep weaving, keep growing, keep weaving, and I'll see you guys next time.